Hello everyone, this is your buddy BP, and no, your eyes do not deceive you. I am playing Black Ops 3. I finally got it. I've been asked to play this game before, so I decided to finally go ahead and get it. So expect some footage of me playing this in the future. I'm not giving up Destiny, but I do want to play some other games on my channel. But I'm not here to talk about Black Ops 3. I'm actually here to talk about the new Star Wars movie, Star Wars The Force Awakens. It's been a few hours since I've seen the film, and I've had some time to digest it, so I want to give you all a quick review on what I felt about the film. Before I begin, I want to say two things. First off, this is what I would like to call 99% spoiler-free, meaning I'm going to completely avoid all major details, all big drama bombs here. I'm going to avoid all that. I might have to talk about a few small details here and there just to explain my feelings on why I feel the way I do about the film, but I am going to avoid all the big details. So unless you're the kind of person you don't want to learn anything about the film outside of what you've already seen in like the trailers, then yeah, you can probably just like go ahead and mute this video or go watch something else right now. But if that's not something that's going to bother you, then you can go ahead and keep on watching. I will avoid spoilers. And secondly, I want to mention, for those of you who just want the quick version of my feelings here, if I had to summarize my feelings on this movie in one word, that word would be satisfying. I did enjoy the film. I thought it was a very satisfying film. I did have a few minor complaints, but I did enjoy the film a lot, and it is a film I am going to recommend. I'm just going to go ahead and mention it off the bat because I am going to spend a little bit of time talking about the few things that that bugged me, so I just don't want anyone to panic and think that I'm like pooping on the film. I'm just, criticizing, just giving you my thoughts and feelings on the way things turned out. But yet, just want to go ahead and mention that. Go ahead, just dive right on in. The first thing I want to mention is what I feel like is the strongest thing about the film, the best thing about the film, and that is these new characters. I really enjoyed, what's her name? I got it written down here. Daisy Ridley as Rey. And I also especially enjoyed John Boyega as Finn. He was probably my favorite part of the film. I really enjoy these two new characters. I really like these actors. They know how to ramp up the drama when it's necessary. They can be witty when necessary. And they play off each other so well. I really like the chemistry of these two actors. I think it's probably the strongest part of this film. I also really liked BB-8. It's really interesting to get a character like that right because it's not a living thing, it's an object, it's a machine, and you have to give it personality even though it can't like talk, or at least it certainly can't communicate in a way that the audience can understand. So it's certainly all the other characters in the Star Wars universe can understand them, but to give something like that personality, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of skill, and they managed to pull it off. And I just liked every little moment that BB-8 was on the screen. It was really a delight to see him. There were also a few other characters I enjoyed. Oscar Isaac gets to play Poe Dameron? Make sure I got it right. I liked him too. We didn't get a lot of him in the film. I felt like we got very little of him. I really did like the scenes with him. He has a few scenes where he plays off of Finn that I really enjoyed a lot. The film started off very strongly. Another character I like, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, feel free to humiliate me if I don't, Lupita Nyong'o. She was playing, I think I'm getting this right, Maz Katana. I really liked her character a lot. We didn't get that much of her. It seemed like they were trying to set her up as like new Yoda. I really did like her character, but again, didn't get as much of her as I wanted, and that kind of brings me to one of my first complaints. Even though these characters are indeed, these new characters, they are the strongest part of this film, they don't get a lot of backstory. We get a few quick glimpses and a few really pithy explanations as to who they are and how they wound up in the situation, but it's really vague, and it lacks a lot of concrete details, and I understand they want to save some of that for the next film. They probably have a few more surprises in store about these characters and who they are and where they come from. But I really felt like the film would have benefited more from letting us know more about these characters and really the world in general. It seems to me that the Star Wars world in the new film, it hasn't really changed that much since Jedi. there was, I mean, the Empire, it's not really the Empire. They're still around, but they're called the New Order because they don't have an empire to rule over anymore. And the Republic is still around, but they're still kind of at odds, and it doesn't seem like things have changed that much. I kind of expected more of a dramatic change in this universe. But we don't get a lot of explanation as to how that unfolded either. I really felt like we could have used a bit more exposition going into this new installment to the Star Wars franchise. One other complaint that I had was the villains. The villain game, I don't think it was quite as strong here. I like the actors, but I mean, let's face it, Darth Vader is just an impossible act to top. There were some good performances, though. Adam Driver played Kylo Ren. Very interesting choice for kind of a new Vader. Different character, though. When he's first introduced, we're definitely established that he's a very powerful character, and I liked him from the beginning, but as we begin to learn more about him, as the story progresses, we discover he's a bit more complex than that. If I had to compare him to another character from a different series, I don't know how many of you listening to this have ever seen Avatar, The Last Airbender. Not that awful M. Night Shyamalan movie, but the actual original animated series that film was based on. There was a character in that series called Zuko, and his character Kylo Ren, he reminded me a lot of Zuko. He is an antagonist, and he has antagonistic goals, but he's also very apprehensive. He feels very unsure of himself. He's constantly questioning whether or not he's making the correct decisions, and it certainly gives his character complexity, but at the same time, it doesn't make him feel really all that menacing. I mean, I guess it makes sense because he is following up Vader. There's even like a whole scene in this film where he's kind of like talking to himself, and he's all like, "Oh, Vader senpai, how will I ever become as totally super awesome as you are?" It was actually a little funny to watch. But yeah, that's kind of his character. It's definitely an interesting character. I'm curious to see where they're going with it, but as a villain, he's just not quite as menacing. We have Andy Serkis playing Supreme Leader Snoke, which is a stupid name. They should have gone with a different name, I think. That sounds like a placeholder name, like they were trying to come up with a name for him, and they're like, screw it, we'll just call him Snoke and change it later. And they totally forgot about it, and they just left it that way. He's kind of like new Emperor. We didn't get a lot of details from him either. We're not sure who he is, where he came from, how he became the leader of this new order. Was he also in the Empire? How is it that he can train people to be Sith Lords? We don't know. It's really... the details are vague and mostly non-existent. I can understand, because if I remember correctly, we didn't really get a lot of the Emperor in A New Hope either. So I guess it makes sense in that context. But I hope they explain more about him in the future. Too bad they can't change that stupid name. But anyway, another thing that kind of bugged me, Gwendolyn Christie as Captain Phasma. I was really excited to hear this. I was like, ooh, Brina Tarth is going to be in, the new Star Wars movie. That's super awesome. So I was looking forward to seeing her. And she only has 2, maybe 3 scenes in the movie. And even in those scenes, she doesn't really have much to do. And I was really disappointed. I was kind of hoping to see like an action scene where she was kicking some ass. But I didn't really get it. I hope we get to see more of her, because she's a really good character, and I wanted to see, and I was really interested in seeing more of her, but we just didn't get it. I was very disappointed to see that, hopefully in the next film. What I wasn't disappointed with was Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. They were both great in this film. I mean, they didn't miss a beat. They got right back into character. We didn't get that much of Carrie Fisher, but we got a lot of Harrison Ford. And I was a little worried going into this about Harrison Ford. I remember him making that Indiana Jones movie a few years ago, and that was kind of meh, watching that. So I was a little worried it was going to be like that, watching him in this film, but it wasn't like that at all. I mean, it was Han Solo all over again. He hadn't changed at all. He's definitely, clearly a few years older, but he's still the same Han Solo, and it was just a delight. It was so wonderful just watching him act off with the new actors. And one thing I did like was that they did wait a while to introduce him. It felt like for like the whole first act, at least well over 30 minutes into the film, before we start seeing characters that we recognize from the previous films. So it's like all these new characters get like the whole first third of the film to just shine on their own, which is a really smart move. I thought that was the best way to go, because if they introduced like Harrison Ford too early in, it would have seemed like it was his movie. And they really needed to, take these new characters and establish them as the new main characters, and they did successfully do that. But I'm glad they were able to get Harrison Ford in to liven up the movie and bring a lot of fun to it. And it was just so wonderful to watch him embrace that role again and act with these new characters, which I'm sure we will definitely enjoy seeing more of in the future. Another thing that I also enjoyed were the action scenes. I was surprised how high tempo and action packed at least the first half of this film was. For like that first act, I mean, it's just action scene after action scene, and it's like it almost never gives you a moment to breathe. It's just so intense. By the time we get to the second half of the film, it does kind of quiet down a little bit, but it does pick up again once the third act hits. And they were really fun. They were exciting. One thing I will mention, that if you're the kind of person you're prone to motion sickness, do watch out. There's a lot of that whole thing where the cameras are moving in crazy angles and they're moving very fast and turning and tilting. And if you are prone to motion sickness, you may find many of these very unpleasant, because there's a lot of flying and a lot of shooting while flying, and it's lots of crazy camera angles, so watch out. I do want to close this out by bringing up one more point, and that's one thing that really did bother me about the film, is that it was a little predictable. There was a lot of, I guess you could say, borrowing from A New Hope. I remember when Lucas was making the prequel series, there was something he said once about how the films have like rhythm and it's like poetry or whatever. There's like reoccurring themes and motifs, history repeating itself. And there was a lot of that in this film. And it was kind of fun at first, because I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, that scene is kind of like a parallel to the one in New Hope where Leia gives R2-D2 the secret message for Obi-Wan. And I'm watching another and I'm like, oh, that's kind of like almost exactly like the cantina scene from A New Hope. And I'm seeing a lot more of this as the film goes, and there's a lot of reoccurring themes. And if you haven't seen A New Hope, if you're really young and this is like your first introduction to the Star Wars universe, then it's not something that's going to bother you. It'll probably actually allow you to appreciate the film better. But for someone who's seen these films more than a couple times, I eventually started seeing the patterns, and I started seeing where they were going with things. And by the time we got to the third act, and there's a few like big drama bombs that are dropped in that third act, I'm not going to reveal them, but by the time we get to them, I already saw where it was going, and I was like, okay, when they establish certain scenes where these bombs get dropped, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty much 90% certain where this is going to go, and it goes there, and it was a little bit unsatisfying, because I was able to see it coming. You don't want to see a twist coming, but I was able to kind of quickly discern where it was going to go, so I didn't feel like I was impacted by it as much as I felt like it would have, and it was mostly because he plays it kind of safe. J.J. Abrams, I saw him do this in the last Star Trek film. I believe it was Into Darkness or whatever, where there's a lot of borrowing from Wrath of Khan, and you can see where things are going. That's sort of like the approach he's taken in this film, where he's playing it really, really safe and relying on a lot of familiar things while also, propping it up with these really good new actors. That's sort of like what his thing was in Star Trek, and he's kind of doing it here too, but he's doing it a lot. And it's playing it safe. He's wanting, to make something that's palatable for, old Star Wars fans and new fans alike to easily accept. And I think that's a fair approach. But I know he's going to make more. And for Episode 8, I hope he's willing to take more risks and try some different things and really catch me off guard. And but I do like where he's going with this. I really do like the movie. I thought it was very fun. If someone were to ask me whether or not it was worth going and paying full price to see at a movie theater, I would say yes. both to old fans and new ones alike. If anything, if you're a new fan, you might appreciate it better because you don't have the previous films to sort of set your expectations as to where the story goes. But I will say it was a very satisfying film. I am curious to see where it's going to go in the future. There was one other thing that did bother me. I'm not going to explain it here because it's a little spoilerish. It deals with a certain plot device that comes into play late in the movie in the last half, and it was kind of ridiculous in my opinion. Like I said, I'm not going to go into detail here because it's a little spoilerish, but it was one of those things where I saw it and I was like, nah, that's a little too ridiculous for me. But I can explain that in another video because it feels like the kind of thing I might want to rant about. But yeah, that just about does it for this video. If you liked it, then spank that like button. Also leave a comment in the comment section with your feedback on the channel or on the new Star Wars movie. I love hearing back from you. And as always, y'all be good to each other, and I will see you in the next video.